I've been traveling for work for almost a decade, but March of 2021 was different. The pandemic had slowed everything down, made airports quieter, streets emptier, and hotel lobbies echo with their own loneliness. My name's Ryan Pierce, 38 business consultant, divorced for 3 years, and terrible at cooking anything that doesn't come in a paper bag. That month, my company sent me to Seattle to help a small logistics startup recover after the lockdown slump. The job wasn't bad. The people were fine. But every night when I came back to my room 407 at the Silverline Suites, I felt that familiar weight of silence press in. The kind of silence that hums behind your ears until you can't ignore it anymore. My life had become a series of identical hotel rooms. The faint detergent smell, the scratchy carpet, the small desk that somehow always wobbled. I ate alone, worked alone, and scrolled through news headlines that made the world feel like a movie I wasn't part of. That night it was drizzling outside, Seattle-style rain, steady, misty, like the sky couldn't decide whether to cry or sigh. I sat by the window, watched the city lights bounce off wet asphalt, and told myself I wasn't lonely. But loneliness has a way of dressing up like calm until you look it in the eye. On impulse, I downloaded Tinder. I hadn't used it in months. Half my matches were probably inactive and the rest were bots. But then I saw her. Lena Marlowe. 29, brown hair, hazel eyes, a grin that looked like it belonged to someone who knew how to have fun. Her bio said, "I make terrible coffee but great company." I swiped right. We matched instantly. We started talking. The conversation felt easy, almost too easy. She joked about Seattle weather. I teased her about her coffee skills. She said she lived a few blocks away, that she was tired of being cooped up, and asked if I wanted to split a bottle of wine and complain about 2021 together. I hesitated. I wasn't the kind of guy to invite strangers into hotel rooms. But she sent a selfie holding a bottle of Merlot, her hair damp, a teasing caption, "Relax, I don't bite." I laughed, told her, "Fine, one glass." By 10 o'clock I'd straightened my shirt, shoved my laundry bag under the bed, and tried not to feel stupid for caring how I looked. The knock came right on time. Soft, quick, like someone testing the sound before committing. When I opened the door, there she was, drenched from the rain, brown hair sticking to her cheek, eyes bright like headlights in fog. "Hi," she said with a shy smile. "God, Seattle weather." "Yeah," I said, stepping aside. "It's basically atmospheric soup." She laughed, a real one, and stepped in. For a moment it felt good, normal, like maybe the night wasn't another repeat of the last 100. But then I saw it. A faint metallic glint inside her half-open bag. A flash, maybe a keychain, maybe something else. I told myself it was nothing, but my stomach didn't believe it. Lena put the wine bottle on the table and started looking around like she was cataloging the room. Her jacket dripped a little on the carpet. "Nice place," she said. "You travel a lot?" "Too much," I admitted. "Kind of used to being alone." She smiled, but something about it felt rehearsed. "That makes you easy to talk to," she said, turning slightly to check her phone. The glow from her screen reflected on her face, and for a brief second I saw a man's face on the screen. Not a wallpaper, a video call. I froze. "Friend checking in?" I asked lightly. "Yeah," she said too fast. "My cousin." Then, a sound, a soft thud in the hallway, then another, like someone trying a doorknob. I turned toward the door. She didn't even flinch. "You hear that?" I asked. "Hear what?" That's when I felt the hair on the back of my neck rise. I walked to the peephole. 2 shadows stood just beyond the door, silhouettes of men, one tall with a hood pulled up, the other leaning close to the doorframe. Whispering, I stepped back. "Lena, who's out there?" She blinked, playing dumb. "What are you talking about?" But her hand slid toward her bag, the same one with the metallic glint. I didn't think. I just acted. Grabbed my phone, thumbed the emergency button, hit speaker. 9911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice echoed through the room. The effect was instant. The men outside moved, fast. Footsteps thundered down the hall. Lena cursed, grabbed her bag, and bolted. The door slammed behind her. I locked it, every muscle shaking. My pulse was so loud I could barely hear the operator. Sir? Hello? Are you safe? I think so, I stammered. Someone tried to, I don't know, break in. By the time the officers arrived 40 minutes later, I'd replayed the whole scene 100 times. The security footage showed her and two men walking down the hall, circling twice, then disappearing when I called. The cops told me they'd been running scams on travelers, fake profiles, quick robberies, easy targets. One officer said, "You did the right thing, man. Most people freeze." I didn't feel heroic. I felt hollow. When they left, I sat by the window staring at the rain. The wine bottle still sweated on the table, unopened. And all I could think was, how many other doors did they knock on tonight? I didn't sleep that night. Every sound from the hallway made me flinch. By morning, I'd packed half my things, ready to leave Seattle. But work had other plans. 3 more days of meetings, data reports, polite conversations that felt meaningless. When I logged into my morning video call, my coworker joked, "You look like you've seen a ghost." Something like that, I said. I didn't tell anyone the full story. What was I supposed to say? I almost got robbed because I was lonely. That night, I skipped dinner and sat on the hotel bed scrolling through Tinder, half out of habit, half out of curiosity. Lena's profile was gone, deleted. I didn't feel angry, just embarrassed. Loneliness makes you do stupid things. By day 2, the cops emailed me a follow-up. They'd found my report matched 2 similar cases in the area. Both men in business hotels, both lured by women with different names, but the same description. That metallic glint I'd seen, probably a knife. I started checking my locks twice, then 3 times before bed. The silence that used to just bother me now scared me. I kept the TV on low all night just to drown out my thoughts. But something else started to bother me more. Why had she hesitated when I called 911? Why did she look scared? Not at me, but at the men outside. That thought kept me awake longer than the fear. On my last night in Seattle, I decided to take a walk. The rain had finally stopped, the air sharp and clean. I wandered downtown, passing coffee shops and late-night diners, letting the city noise replace the memory of that quiet hallway. Then I saw her, Lena, standing under a streetlight across the intersection. She wasn't dressed like before. Her jacket was torn, her hair matted. She looked thinner, frightened. For a moment, I thought I was imagining her, but when she saw me, her eyes widened. "Ryan," she called softly, like someone saying a name they didn't expect to say again. Every instinct told me to turn around, but curiosity overruled fear. I crossed the street. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "The cops are looking for you." She shook her head. "I didn't know what they were planning, I swear. They said it was just going to be a distraction, a quick grab. I didn't know they'd hurt people." I stared at her. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Why tell me this?" "Because you didn't deserve it," she said. "You were nice." Her voice cracked. Before I could respond, a black sedan turned the corner. She looked over her shoulder and froze. "They found me," she whispered. "Who?" "The guys from that night." The car slowed near us. My heart kicked into gear. I grabbed her arm. "Come on." We ducked into a narrow alley, sprinting through puddles until we reached a lit storefront. I called 911 again, hands shaking. This time, I didn't hesitate. By the time police arrived, the car was gone. Lena was crying, saying she wanted protection, a deal, something. That was the last time I saw her. The next day, detectives told me she'd agreed to testify. The men had been running scams from Portland to Vancouver. She was part of it, but not by choice. I flew home that night, It's been 2 years since that night. I still travel for work, still check into hotels, still unpack the same suitcase. But I've changed. I double lock everything. I notice the small details. Who's in the lobby? Who lingers too long near my door? Sometimes, when it rains, I think about Lena. Not the version from the profile, or the girl with the wine bottle, but the one under the streetlight, scared, trying to undo something she couldn't control. I don't know what happened to her after the trial. I never asked. Maybe she disappeared again. Maybe she finally started over. As for me, I deleted every dating app. Not out of bitterness, out of clarity. Because that night taught me something about people, about loneliness, and about trust. Loneliness can make you open doors you'd never open otherwise. But sometimes, what walks through isn't company. It's danger wearing a friendly face. Loneliness is not an invitation. It's a warning. When we let isolation drive our choices, we stop seeing red flags for what they are. Connection is important, but not at the cost of safety or judgment. Trust should be earned slowly, not swiped into existence. In the end, it's better to sit alone with peace than share the room with danger disguised as comfort. It's strange how rain can sound like memory. Sometimes it's gentle, like the soft rhythm of someone breathing beside you. Other times it hits hard, reminding you of everything you've tried to forget. The night I met Caleb, Bristol was drowning in rain. That endless November kind of rain that turns the air cold and heavy. I remember thinking it would ruin my hair, that it would make me look nervous before I even arrived. I didn't realize until later that it was a warning of sorts. The world whispering, "Not again, Ivy." It had been 3 years since I'd been on a date. 3 long years of saying no to anyone who tried, of deleting apps before even opening them, of convincing myself that maybe I was better off alone. My last relationship had ended like a car crash you could see coming but couldn't stop. His name was Eric, a musician who thought love meant ownership. I'd learned to lie about where I was, who I was with, what I wore. I'd learned to smile through the fear. By the time it was over, I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. But then came Caleb. He messaged me first, polite, funny, the kind of man who used punctuation and asked questions that made me feel seen. He told me he taught English at a nearby school and liked poetry, that he was tired of superficial people. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. So when he asked to meet at a small cafe on Gloucester Road, I said yes. The cafe was half empty that night. The air smelled like coffee and wet coats. He was already there when I arrived. Dark hair, slightly messy, a book beside his cup. He stood when he saw me, smiled like he'd been waiting all day. "Ivy," he said, and I nodded. His voice was soft, measured, safe almost. I thought, finally, someone normal. For the first 20 minutes, everything felt easy. We talked about teaching, music, movies. He told me about his students, how they called him Mr. Reed like he was ancient. I laughed. He made me feel almost like my old self again. Then my phone buzzed. "Who keeps texting you?" he asked, still smiling. "Oh, just my flatmate," I said. He nodded, but his eyes lingered on the screen. "You should put it on silent, it's rude." Something in his tone tightened the air between us. Not sharp, but possessive. A small echo of a voice I'd heard before. I brushed it off. He's just old-fashioned, I told myself. But little things started to add up. When the waiter smiled at me, Caleb's jaw flexed. When I mentioned my sister, he asked if she lived with me or just showed up whenever. His questions started to feel like inspection rather than interest. My stomach nodded with déjà vu. By dessert, I wasn't sure if I was imagining it. The way his eyes followed every move I made, the way he mirrored my words like he was taking notes. I excused myself to the restroom and texted my sister, "Call me in 5 mins. Emergency." When I came back, he looked calm. Too calm. "You were gone a while," he said. "Talking to someone?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. Yeah, I'll come right now," I said quickly into the receiver, pretending panic. "Sorry, Caleb. My sister's not well. I have to go." He reached for my wrist, his hand gentle but firm. "I'll drive you," he said, voice low. I pulled free, smiling politely. "No, it's just a block away." Outside, the rain hit my face like applause. I walked fast, breathing hard. Each step away from that cafe felt like survival. When I got home, I cried. Not because of him, but because of me. Because even after all this time, I still doubted my instincts. Because I almost stayed. Healing isn't a straight line. People tell you that like it's a comfort, but what they don't say is how easy it is to slide backward. After that night with Caleb, I told myself I was fine. I'd dodged a bullet. I'd proven I could spot the signs. But underneath, something familiar began to stir. That quiet voice that said, "You attract the wrong kind of men." I met Eric when I was 21, working at a bookstore. He was charming in the way trouble always is. A smile that dared you to say no. He played guitar, wrote songs about heartbreak. He said I was his muse. It sounds romantic until you realize it means he's writing about your pain. At first he was kind. He'd wait outside my work, walk me home, bring me coffee. Then he started asking where I was going, who I was seeing. It was subtle, concern disguised as care. "I just worry about you," he'd say, and I'd believe him. But soon, my friends stopped calling. My world shrank to the size of his approval. When I finally left, he showed up at my door 2 nights later, crying, apologizing, saying he couldn't live without me. The police had to tell him to stop. That was 3 years ago. But when Caleb said, "You should put it on silent," my body remembered before my mind did. I started seeing signs everywhere. A car that slowed when I walked home, a shadow near my flat's gate, a message request from an unknown number. I told myself it was just paranoia, but some part of me was certain. Someone was watching again. One evening, I saw Caleb's name on a local Reddit thread. Anyone else get bad vibes from this guy? Met him at a cafe, kept asking where I lived. My heart sank. I wasn't the only one. I deleted my dating app that night. For days, I jumped at every sound, checked the locks twice. I kept thinking about that moment. His calm expression, his hand around my wrist, that half smile. Like he already knew I'd try to leave. Healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes it's a circle, and you find yourself back where you started, just praying you can break it this time. By December, Bristol's cold settled in deep. I wrapped myself in layers, avoided the cafe street, ignored every unknown number. My sister Hannah came over often, sensing the weight I wasn't saying out loud. "You can't live scared forever," she said one night, handing me a mug of tea. "I'm not scared," I lied. "I'm just being careful." She smiled softly. "You deserve normal, Ivy." But what did normal even mean anymore? One evening, while walking home from work, I caught sight of a man across the street. Tall, dark coat, umbrella tilted just so. My stomach twisted. He wasn't looking at me exactly, but it felt like he was waiting. I walked faster, my heartbeat matching the rain. When I turned onto my street, I glanced back. He was gone. Inside my flat, the silence pressed close. I checked the windows, the locks. My reflection in the glass looked pale, tired, smaller than I remembered. I thought about calling someone, Hannah maybe, but I didn't want to sound paranoid. I turned on the TV just for the noise. That night, I dreamed of the cafe, of Caleb sitting alone, his eyes fixed on me even when I wasn't there. By January, I was exhausted. Every noise outside made me flinch. I kept telling myself I was safe, that Caleb was just another mistake, a lesson, not a curse. But one evening, as I walked home, I saw something taped to my door, a single white envelope. No name, no stamp. Inside was a photo, me at the cafe window that night, looking out at the rain. My heart dropped. I reported it to the police. They took notes, nodded, said they'd keep an eye. But I could see it in their faces. They didn't believe it was serious. Just another anxious woman, they thought. For days, nothing happened. Then one morning I saw his profile picture again, not on the app but in a people you may know suggestion on Facebook. I hadn't told him my last name. I deleted my account immediately. It felt like drowning in déjà vu. Every man's kindness started to look like danger. Every glance felt like surveillance. Hannah finally convinced me to see a therapist. "You can't let one man define your safety," she said. But I think she misunderstood. It wasn't one man. It was the pattern. The way charm could hide control. The way danger could wear kindness like a mask. By spring, the rain had slowed. I'd moved flats. New address, new locks, new number. Slowly, the noise in my head quieted. I started painting again. Small canvases of stormy skies and narrow streets. Life was still fragile, but it was mine. One evening, as I stood by my new window, I saw it. Rain streaking the glass just like that first night. For a moment, I thought I saw his reflection behind me. But when I turned, it was only me. It hit me then. All those years of fear had taught me to listen, to trust that voice inside. The one that said, "Run now." The one that had saved me twice. I made tea, sat by the window and let the rain fall. This time it didn't sound like memory. It sounded like release. Sometimes survival isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It's leaving before the danger unfolds. It's trusting your instinct when no one else believes you. The moral of Ivy's story isn't just about avoiding bad men. It's about recognizing that healing means never silencing yourself again. Because the most dangerous thing a woman can do isn't running away. It's convincing herself there's no reason to. I've never been good at trusting people, especially strangers. It's not that I'm inherently paranoid, it's experience speaking. Years of quiet routines, long nights alone in my apartment, and online messages that fizzled out after polite introductions had taught me the hard way that people are often more interested in the idea of you than in you. Meeting Julia Kane felt different. At least I wanted it to feel different. I first saw her at a company networking event, standing in a corner, laughing at something someone said with that easy magnetic smile. She noticed me noticing her, and for reasons I still can't fully explain, she walked over and introduced herself. That single conversation lingered in my mind for days. The sound of her laugh, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled. 2 weeks later, she asked if I wanted to meet at my apartment for drinks. Normally, I'd never have agreed. Meeting someone for the first time in a private space isn't my style, but I wanted to challenge myself, to trust. I told myself, she's just Julia. Keep boundaries, pay attention, trust cautiously. I spent hours preparing that evening, tidying the apartment until it looked like a page from a magazine, lighting autumn-scented candles, and creating a playlist of soft jazz that would fill the corners with warmth. By the time she arrived, my heart was a steady drum, not from nerves but anticipation. She stepped inside and her eyes lit up. "Wow, your place is cozy. And these candles, smells like autumn." I smiled, fumbling a little with my words. "Thanks." I wanted it to feel welcoming. We settled onto the couch with glasses of red wine, the city lights spilling through the windows. She talked about her work, her travels, favorite books. I shared stories of my childhood, my little quirks, and for the first time in weeks, I felt that calm bubble of genuine connection. I didn't notice the time passing. The conversation flowed naturally, laughter punctuating the soft jazz. For a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to believe. Maybe this could be real. Maybe trust wasn't a fool's game after all. Then my phone buzzed. My sister, concerned as always. I whispered reassurances, speaking just loud enough for her to hear. When I hung up, Julia's smile had shifted. It was different, sharper, calculating. "Why'd you answer her?" she asked quietly, stepping closer. "Shouldn't we have each other's attention?" I laughed nervously. "It was just a quick check-in." "Nothing." Her eyes narrowed. Something about the way she leaned forward made me feel a cold trickle of unease. That night I didn't know it yet, but my instincts would become my lifeline. For a while everything seemed normal again. We talked, we laughed. I tried to convince myself her earlier sharpness was a fluke, a momentary reaction. But then she began speaking about boundaries in a way that unsettled me. She casually mentioned her past year in a mental health facility, describing behaviors and limitations that, in her mind, were non-negotiable. It wasn't the mental health history itself. It was the intensity of her tone, the sudden rigidity, the almost imperceptible edge in her voice. My gut tightened. Something about her words felt less like sharing, more like a warning. We moved to the kitchen to grab another glass of wine. That's when the first flash of real danger happened. She stepped closer, her movements abrupt. "Shelley, why do you keep distracting yourself?" she asked, voice low but hard. Before I could respond, her hand gripped the counter. I froze for a heartbeat, instincts screaming. And then, she swung. The edge of the wine bottle caught my arm, shattering the glass. I ducked instinctively, feeling the shards near my forearm. Panic and adrenaline surged, and I grabbed the heavy lamp sitting on the counter, swinging it instinctively toward her shoulder. Ceramic and metal clashed, the sound echoing through the apartment. My heart raced, and every fiber of my being screamed, "Get out." I didn't wait. I bolted toward the door, fumbling for my keys as she shouted behind me. The hallway seemed endless, every second stretching like hours. I flung open the door, dialing 911 while stumbling down the stairs, lungs burning, hands trembling. The sound of sirens was the sweetest thing I had ever heard. Police arrived within minutes, lights flashing, voices commanding. I barely had the presence of mind to give them my statement. Julia was gone. Just gone. Vanished into the night before they could catch her. The officers shook their heads sympathetically as they confirmed what neighbors and co-workers whispered quietly to me later. Her history of aggression was well documented. I had narrowly escaped. That night, lying in a spare bed in my sister's apartment, I realized how fragile safety can be, how easily charm can disguise danger. The warmth and humor I had felt earlier in the night had evaporated, replaced by a gnawing awareness that not everyone who smiles is trustworthy. I didn't sleep. My mind replayed every detail. The way she leaned, the tone in her voice, the sudden shift from light-hearted charm to something sharp, predatory. I knew that I had been lucky. Not everyone survives encounters like this unscathed. Weeks later, I moved into a new apartment. Everything changed. Lights on at night, phone close, doors double-locked. Every routine became a shield. My world shrank at first, cautious, careful, but it was necessary. I could no longer take anything for granted. Returning to dating apps was a slow process. I observed profiles carefully. I tested boundaries, video called anyone I was remotely interested in before agreeing to meet. I had learned the hard way that instinct is the first line of defense. I had learned to watch for inconsistencies, subtle red flags, and the way charm can be a weapon. I built up routines, rituals that made me feel safe. I walked in daylight. I let someone meet me first in a public space. I trusted cautiously. Months later, I was cautiously dating again. Coffee first. Daylight. Observing actions over words. My heart had healed, slowly, scarred, but stronger. I knew now that charm is not a substitute for trust. Safety is earned before intimacy. Boundaries are not optional. I smiled faintly at my own mantra. Keep the doors open and the windows locked. A reminder that I could welcome people into my life without compromising safety. That I could trust cautiously, listen to my instincts, and protect myself while still allowing space for connection. I hadn't let fear define me. I had let it teach me. And sometimes, teaching is the only way to survive the ones who blur the line between charm and danger. Trust must be earned, not assumed. Charm and charisma can mask danger, and boundaries are non-negotiable. Safety and self-respect come first. Instincts are vital. Learning to trust cautiously is not weakness. It is wisdom, and sometimes the difference between danger and survival. I used to think dating apps were a kind of modern confession booth. You show up with your best smile, confess your loneliness, and hope someone absolves you with a match. That's how I met Teresa Quinn. My name's Lucas Hale, 38, freelance graphic designer, coffee addict, part-time optimist. After 2 years of pandemic-era video calls and half-hearted first dates, I told myself I'd give it one more try. Maybe this time would be different. Teresa's profile caught my attention because she didn't sound like everyone else. Her bio read, "I like abandoned places and late-night drives." Good grammar's a turn-on. It sounded quirky, a little dark, but still grounded. We messaged for a week before she agreed to meet. She used punctuation, real punctuation, which is rare online. She asked about the kind of art I liked, my favorite films, even my go-to gas station snack. She laughed at my answer. Red Bull and beef jerky. I have the diet of a sleep-deprived trucker. Her replies felt genuine, easy, warm. We settled on a jazz bar on West Belmont, cozy, a little old-fashioned, the kind of place where you can hear a saxophone over your own heartbeat. The day of the date, I worked too long, rushed through a shower, and changed shirts 3 times. I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard, but I also didn't want to look like I'd given up. Outside, snow had started falling, that Chicago kind of snow that doesn't twinkle or flutter, it just commits. The city lights blurred behind it like smudged paint. At 7:45 p.m., just as I parked near the bar, she texted, "Hey, the place is full. Can we meet somewhere quieter? I know a spot, it's close." It didn't feel unusual. People change plans all the time. "Sure," I typed back. "Send me the address." 15 minutes later, I was driving through a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Industrial, brick warehouses, old signage half covered in snow. My GPS arrow spun twice, recalculating, as if the street didn't officially exist anymore. Then her message buzzed. "I'm inside the red house at the end." That's when my gut started whispering. The red house wasn't really red, more like rust and forgotten paint, a place with boarded-up windows and a sagging porch. Still, curiosity's a funny thing. It disguises itself as courage until you're already in the wrong place. I parked under a flickering streetlight and texted, "Hey, just got here." A reply came instantly. "Doors open, come in." That smiley face froze me. Teresa hadn't used emojis once in all our chats. She always typed in full sentences, no fluff. Something about that smiley, too casual, too wrong, set off alarms in my head. The snow made soft crunches under my boots as I walked toward the gate. The air smelled like metal, like rust or blood. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once, then nothing. I took one more step, and that's when I saw them. 2 shapes behind the side fence, moving slow, like they thought I couldn't see. A whisper cut through the quiet. "He's here." My pulse went nuclear. I forced myself to stay calm. I pulled out my phone, pretended to check something, and tapped open my rideshare app. My thumb hovered over the pickup button. Then a voice from the dark said, "Hey you, Lucas. Teresa said you were cool." I swallowed hard, forcing a casual laugh. "Yeah, she texted. Said she's running late. I'll wait in the car." The voice didn't answer. I turned slowly, every nerve in my body screaming. I walked back toward my car, not too fast, not too slow, because running makes predators chase. Snow crunched under my shoes, loud as breaking glass. When I reached my car, I slid in, locked the doors, and started the engine. The headlights cut through the alley like a blade. The figures at the fence stepped back, then melted into shadow. I didn't breathe until I'd driven 3 blocks away. I parked under a gas station canopy and just sat there gripping the steering wheel until the tremors stopped. My phone screen glowed pale in the dark. I opened Bumble. Our chat was still there, or at least I thought it was. The last message, the one with the smiley face, was gone. Deleted. Her profile picture, the one with the sunlight in her hair, the smirk that looked like a secret, had vanished too. I stared at the empty chat bubble. My chest ached like I'd been sucker punched. At first I thought maybe she'd unmatched me, embarrassed or second-guessing, but the logical part of my brain knew better. Someone else had been using that profile. Someone who knew how to talk like her. I drove straight to the nearest police station. The officer on duty, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes, listened while I told the story. When I finished, she sighed. "You did the right thing turning back. We've had a few like that lately. Fake profiles, luring people to isolated spots. It's organized." "Organized?" She nodded. "We think small groups, maybe robberies, maybe worse. People trust a pretty face on an app. You'd be surprised how many don't make it to the station." Her words stayed with me long after I left. Back at my hotel, I sat on the bed in my half-buttoned shirt, the one I'd picked so carefully earlier. I looked at my reflection in the black TV screen, the faint outline of a man who'd almost been stupid enough to walk into a trap. All that preparation, all that hope, for a maybe. I poured myself a plastic cup of whiskey from the minibar and watched the snow drift sideways outside the window. The city glowed orange, like it was burning quietly under the storm. Somewhere between the second and third sip, I opened Bumble again. I scrolled through old messages, tiny ghosts of connection, jokes, plans, confessions, little digital illusions we tell ourselves mean something. I could almost hear Teresa's laugh, the one she'd typed but never spoken. I closed the app and tossed my phone onto the nightstand. In the morning, I stuck a note to the mirror with a hotel pen and a yellow sticky pad. Meet people, not profiles. It felt too simple, but maybe that's what truth is. Something that only sounds profound when it's too late. I left Chicago the next morning, heading south on I-55 with coffee that tasted like burnt hope and radio static for company. The snow turned to sleet, then rain, then nothing at all. At a rest stop outside Bloomington, I sat in the car and thought about how close I'd come to being another police statistic. The idea of dating apps made me feel tired now, like staring into a hall of mirrors, each reflection promising something real, but offering only another version of loneliness. Back home in Springfield, I told a few close friends what had happened. Most said the same thing. "You were lucky." I agreed, but it didn't feel like luck. It felt like instinct finally earning its paycheck. A week later, I got an email from Bumble's safety team confirming the profile had been linked to multiple scams. They thanked me for reporting it. That night, I walked outside, watched snow melt into rain, and thought about how small the world can get when it's filtered through screens. We keep searching for connection, but sometimes the hunt blinds us to danger. We forget that people online are just digital echoes, and not every echo wants you to find where it came from. I'm still open to love, I think, but now I'd rather meet someone in the checkout line at the grocery store than in a chat bubble that can vanish in an instant, because the red house at the end wasn't just a trap in an alley, it was a warning. Not every door you're invited to walk through deserves to be opened. In a world built on profiles and pixels, safety must come before curiosity. Charm can be coded, and danger can wear a friendly smile. Trust your instincts. They're the only part of you the internet can't impersonate. Meet people, not profiles. I never thought I'd feel powerless while standing on the sidewalk outside my best friend's apartment. But that night my heart was racing, my palms slick with sweat, and my mind replaying every warning I'd ever given myself about Connor Reed. Giselle Monroe and I had been inseparable since college, two awkward freshmen thrown together in a small dorm on the outskirts of campus. She had this energy about her, fearless, brilliant, and stubborn, in a way that could infuriate you, but also make you admire her. I, on the other hand, had always been the cautious one. I liked rules, boundaries, order. When we met Connor, I didn't like him. Something about the way he looked at Giselle, intense, calculating, like she was a prize he'd won rather than a person he cared for, set off alarm bells in my head. At first, Giselle didn't see it. She laughed at my concerns, brushed them off. "Shawnee, he's just passionate. You're imagining things." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that she could see what I couldn't. But over the next few years, his obsession became obvious. Constant texts, midnight calls, showing up at her classes unannounced. The guy had a knack for inserting himself into her life at every possible moment. So when she finally ended it, I felt a mix of pride and fear. Pride that she finally stood up for herself. Fear that Connor wouldn't let go. He had a history of dramatics, and Giselle was already trembling the morning after she broke up with him. I promised myself I would stay vigilant, keep her safe no matter what. That night, I had followed her at a discreet distance, just to make sure she got back inside safely. The street was quiet, the summer air sticky and heavy with the scent of rain-soaked asphalt and fallen maple leaves. I saw her walking, headphones in, trying to clear her mind, oblivious to the shadow that had been tailing her. And then I saw him. Connor stood near the corner, his face half hidden by the dark eyes locked on her. My chest tightened. I wanted to yell, to run, to grab her, all at once. Giselle froze as well, her body stiff, shoulders tense. "Connor, please, I told you this is over," she said, her voice trembling but firm. His step forward made my stomach flip. I need to know why. "I can't live without you," he said. Every word dripped with desperation, with something darker I couldn't name. I ran up, heart pounding, gripping her arm. "Go inside, now!" I hissed, dragging her toward the nearest streetlight. He froze momentarily, but then, inexplicably, he pulled a bottle from his jacket. My stomach dropped. "You'll see. You'll all see," he screamed, before pouring alcohol over himself. My lungs caught in my throat as he struck a match. Everything after that happened in a blur. Screaming neighbors, the smell of smoke, fire licking the sidewalk. I yanked Giselle away just as a passerby tackled him, and firefighters arrived seconds later. Connor was screaming, struggling, and then he was gone, carted off by paramedics, leaving behind the echo of his madness. Giselle clung to me, shaking, tears streaking her face. I'll never date anyone without knowing them completely again," she whispered. I held her tighter, whispering, "You're safe now. That's what matters." The days after that night felt unreal. Giselle didn't want to leave her apartment. The moment the wind rattled the window or a car door slammed outside, she flinched. Every knock at the door sent her heart racing. And I couldn't blame her. No one should have to face that kind of terror. I stayed with her as much as I could. We made plans for short walks, slowly extending the distance from her building. We laughed a little during those walks, tried to reclaim pieces of life that Connor had tried to steal from her. But the shadows lingered. She'd wake in the middle of the night, checking the locks, peering through the blinds. It was during one of those walks that she finally opened up about the past few years with Connor. She described the obsessive texts, the calls in the dead of night, the way he tried to isolate her from friends. My stomach tightened with anger and guilt. I had warned her over and over, but she'd been too kind, too trusting, too hopeful. And yet, she had survived. We started making practical changes. She installed additional locks, changed routines, and we even started taking self-defense classes together. I reminded her that she didn't have to be brave all the time, just consistent in protecting herself. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, but necessary. Slowly, Giselle began to reclaim her confidence. Small victories, walking to the corner store, sitting in a cafe without fear, even laughing at silly jokes again, became milestones. Every day was a test. every step forward a victory, and I was there for every single one of them. Weeks passed, and although Giselle was safer, the psychological scars remained. The fear manifested in nightmares, panic attacks, and even avoidance of social events. I worried about her, but I also worried about what she would think if she knew how much I had feared for her life. One night, she admitted the truth. "I can't stop thinking about what could have happened," she said, her voice cracking. "Every step I take, I see him there. I feel like I'm still running." I took her hands in mine. "You're not running anymore. You survived. You're alive, and we'll make sure it stays that way." We started attending therapy sessions together, focusing on trauma recovery and coping strategies. Giselle began journaling, writing down every fear, every anxious thought, until she could look at them without panic. And slowly, very slowly, she started to breathe again. As summer turned into early fall, Giselle began venturing out more confidently. We went to cafes, watched movies in theaters, and even attended small parties. Each step was deliberate, intentional. Every laugh, every smile, was a small victory over the fear Connor had inflicted. We celebrated these victories, acknowledging each as proof of her strength. And one evening, as we walked home under a sky lit with streetlights and fallen leaves, Giselle whispered, I think I'm finally ready to live again." I smiled, my heart full. "You've been living, Giselle. You just didn't know it yet." Months later, Giselle had almost completely regained her sense of normalcy. She started dating again cautiously, meeting people slowly, never rushing. She smiled freely, laughed often, and even allowed herself to trust again, not blindly, but wisely. I realized then that the nights of terror, the moments of panic, the months of recovery, they all led to one lesson. Strength isn't about never feeling fear. It's about moving forward despite it. That night, sitting on her balcony, Giselle turned to me and said softly, "I wouldn't have made it without you." I shook my head. "No, you would have. You just needed someone to remind you of it." We watched the sunset, a calm settling over us both. Connor's shadow may have haunted us, but it could not define our lives. We had survived, we had learned, and we had become stronger than fear. True strength isn't the absence of fear, but the courage to face it. Life may place danger, obsession, and betrayal in our path, but survival, resilience, and support from those who care can turn trauma into empowerment. I used to think loneliness was something you could fix, like repainting a wall or changing a light bulb. That once I transitioned and finally started living as myself, the rest would just fall into place. Friends, maybe love, maybe even peace. But what they don't tell you is that being true to yourself doesn't automatically mean people will meet you there. It just means you stop pretending. My name's Renee Hollis, 44 years old, and I live in Tacoma, Washington. I work as an HR manager for a mid-sized manufacturing company. Spreadsheets by day, microwave dinners by night. It's not glamorous, but after years of chaos, stability feels like luxury. The thing is, stability gets quiet, and quiet gets lonely. After my transition 5 years ago, I promised myself I wouldn't hide again. I'd been invisible enough for one lifetime, first hiding from others, then from myself. But visibility, I've learned, comes with risk. Still, one Friday evening, scrolling through my phone while rain tapped against the window, I decided maybe it was time to try dating again. I joined REO, True Uite, a small LGBTQ+ dating app, where people posted pictures with messy hair and captions about cats and poetry. That's where I met Charlene. She was 39, a copy editor who loved bad puns and worse coffee. Her first message read, "Tell me your favorite smell, and I'll tell you who you are." I wrote back, "Cinnamon, because it's warm even when it burns." We talked for 3 weeks. It felt easy, natural, like we both knew what it was to rebuild ourselves from pieces. She told me about her rescue dog, a border collie named Misty. I told her about my ridiculous addiction to cozy mystery novels. When she asked if I wanted to meet in person, I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. We picked a small cafe downtown, the kind that always smells like cinnamon rolls and second chances. That night I stood in front of the mirror longer than I should have, brushing my hair, straightening my skirt, telling myself I looked okay. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, I just wanted to feel seen. By the time I got there, the air was heavy with mist. Inside, the cafe was all soft lights and jazz on low volume. I ordered chamomile tea, sat by the window and waited. Every few minutes, the bell over the door would ring and I'd look up, half smiling, half scared. At 7:12 p.m., the door jingled again, and everything changed. He was taller than I expected. Older, too. Same jacket Charlene wore in her photos, but hanging awkwardly on his shoulders. "Renee?" he asked, voice deeper, more impatient than I'd imagined. Something inside me hesitated, but politeness overrode instinct. I stood and smiled. "Hi, you must be Charlene?" He nodded, sitting down across from me. "Yeah, that's me. Wow, you look exactly how I pictured." Except he didn't say it like a compliment, more like an observation, a test. "Nice to finally meet you," I said carefully. He leaned in, elbows on the table. "So tell me, when did you decide to, change everything?" I froze. "That's kind of personal for a first date." He laughed, low and humorless. "I'm just curious. My daughter's trans, actually. Thought meeting you might help me understand her." For a second, I didn't process the words. Then the pieces snapped together like broken glass. "Wait, are you saying you're her father? Where's Charlene?" He shrugged, eyes darting away. "She doesn't know I'm here. I saw your messages on her phone. You seemed interesting." The cafe sounds dimmed, conversations fading to a background hum. My skin prickled. "You shouldn't have done that," I whispered. He smiled. "Relax. I'm not a bad guy. I just want to see what makes people like you tick." The way he said, "people like you," hit harder than I expected. I pushed my chair back slowly. "I think we're done here." "Don't be dramatic," he muttered. "Sit down." A couple near the counter turned toward us. His face tightened. "Look, I'm just trying to talk." "No," I said louder, steady this time. "You're trying to invade." The barista glanced over. I caught her eye and she walked toward us. He stiffened, mumbled something, then stood abruptly. For a heartbeat, he hovered, eyes cold, unreadable, before storming out. The bell over the door chimed once, twice, then silence. I sat there, hands shaking, pretending my heart wasn't pounding loud enough to fill the room. The barista, a young woman with short purple hair, came over softly. "Hey, are you okay?" "I will be," I managed. "Do you want me to call someone?" I shook my head. Could you walk me to my car?" She nodded without hesitation. We stepped outside together. The drizzle had started again, the kind that clings instead of falls. At my car, I thanked her, fumbling for words. "You didn't have to," she interrupted, smiling gently. "Everyone deserves to feel safe leaving a cafe." Her kindness almost broke me. When I finally sat inside my car, the adrenaline hit. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. For 10 minutes, I just breathed. That night, I wrote in my journal, "People can wear kindness like a costume. The trick is to see the zipper before they get too close." The next morning, I deleted the app. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. Still, for days, I couldn't shake the image of him sitting there, using his daughter's name like a key to my trust. 3 days later, I got an email. Subject: "I'm so sorry." It was from Charlene. She'd found out what her father had done. She'd written, "He's been struggling since I came out. I didn't know he'd go that far. I'm horrified. Please don't think I was part of it." I stared at the screen for a long time, heart heavy. I wrote back, "Thank you for saying that. I'm not angry at you. I'm just sad it happened. You deserve better than to have your father weaponize your identity." She replied once more, "You too. You didn't deserve that either." After that, we didn't talk again. But something shifted in me. Not bitterness, just understanding. The world isn't divided between good and evil. It's divided between those who listen and those who refuse to. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to sit quietly when someone crosses the line. It's been a year since that night. I still go to the same cafe, different corner, different mug, same cinnamon smell. Sometimes I bring my journal, sometimes just a book. I've made a habit of smiling at the barista who walked me out that night. Her name's Jenna. We talk about podcasts, recipes, the rain. No apps this time. No strangers' faces glowing on my phone. Just real voices, real eyes. I've learned something about fear. It doesn't disappear when you confront it. It just learns to sit quietly in the passenger seat while you keep driving. When I think back to that man, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel pity. Because he came to that cafe thinking I was the one pretending, and left without realizing he was the one wearing a mask. I don't hide anymore. And if being visible means facing moments like that again, so be it. I'd rather be seen and stand my ground than shrink back into the shadows just to make someone else comfortable. Some nights, when the cafe windows fog up and the rain blurs the city lights, I catch my reflection in the glass, tired maybe, but whole. That's enough. True courage isn't just about surviving danger. It's about recognizing when to walk away from it. People can disguise cruelty as curiosity or control as concern, but your safety and dignity are not up for debate. Kindness deserves discernment. Not everyone who smiles means well. And no matter how lonely the world makes you feel, never trade your peace for someone else's misunderstanding of who you are. I never thought I'd let myself hope again. Not after the years of heartbreak, the nights spent scrolling endlessly through dating apps, and the mornings I'd wake up realizing I had poured myself into someone who didn't even notice my absence. Charming liars, men who treated promises like they were punchlines, emotionally unavailable types. I'd dated them all. And every time I'd swore this would be different. When Logan Hart messaged me on Tinder, I felt that cautious spark of optimism. 2 weeks of polite, funny, slightly shy conversations had me smiling more than I had in months. He talked about sailing, about cooking, about wanting real conversations. No pressure, no vague promises, just talk that felt normal. I chose Rossi's Bistro for our first in-person date. Cozy Italian, amber light glowing from wall sconces, soft jazz in the background, a place that whispered intimacy without being overbearing. I arrived early, trying to steady my pulse, tugging at the hem of my blouse like some anxious teenager. Then he appeared, tall, neatly dressed, that half-nervous smile that somehow made him seem trustworthy. "You look amazing," he said, pulling out my chair. I laughed softly, settling in. Flattery before appetizers? Dangerous start. We talked easily. He told me about restoring old boats. I talked about the art studio I ran with my sister. The conversation flowed, light and unforced. I laughed at his dry humor. He listened when I spoke. For the first time in years, I thought maybe this could be steady. Maybe I could trust someone again. And then his phone lit up. A name flashed across the screen. Gilda. I didn't see the text, but his expression changed just for a second. He flipped the phone face down with a speed that made my stomach drop. "Work call," he muttered, a little too quickly. I forced a smile, trying to shake off the tension crawling up my arms. "Late night for work, huh?" "Yeah," he said, forcing a laugh. "My business partner's dramatic." I nodded, sipping my water, trying to believe him. But the nervous energy in his posture was hard to ignore. He kept glancing at the door, shoulders stiff, fingers drumming lightly against the table. I told myself I was being paranoid. But as dessert arrived, tiramisu, soft and sweet. I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. Then the door opened. The woman who stepped in scanned the room like a predator. My pulse slammed against my ribcage. When her eyes locked on Logan, it was like someone had turned off the lights. "Logan," she said, calm but trembling. "So this is your client dinner?" I blinked, unable to speak. He stood abruptly. "Gilda, not here," he said. His voice clipped. "Not here?" she snapped, voice cracking. "You promised me this was over." My stomach dropped. My tea, the soft laugh I'd been holding in, everything I thought I felt. It evaporated. He's married. Or maybe it was worse. He's in something serious, and never mentioned it. "Shelley, Logan started, but she cut him off. "Don't you dare lie again." I grabbed my glass of wine in reflex, almost slamming it onto the table. Red splashed like a wound across the white tablecloth. I could feel everyone's eyes on us, whispers and curious glances bouncing through the bistro. "Gilda, please," I tried, trying to steady my voice. "Let's just—" "Don't you talk to me," she shouted, and it felt like the air cracked around us. Logan sank into the chair, face pale, hands trembling. His silence confirmed it. He hadn't told me everything. The manager arrived, intervening gently, trying to calm the storm. Outside, I watched her collapse under the streetlight as the police arrived. I didn't follow. I didn't need to see it all. My heart ached not for him or her, but for the part of me that had believed in the possibility of something real. Back at my sister's apartment, I sank into the couch with a mug of tea, staring at the city lights blurred by rain-streaked windows. Logan's messages pinged. "Please let me explain. She's unstable." I deleted them all. I let myself feel the disappointment fully this time. No excuses, no rationalizations. I had wanted steady, real conversations, and instead, I'd gotten a mask. I'd wanted someone who listened, who was honest, who showed up fully. I realized tonight that I had been seeking fragments of what I deserved from someone who couldn't even offer the truth. My sister sat across from me, gentle but firm. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, my voice quiet, just tired of being someone's mistake. The city outside didn't care. Couples walked hand in hand under umbrellas, laughing and believing the stories they were told. I whispered to myself, next time, coffee first. Daylight. No wine. The next few weeks were a blur of introspection. I deleted Logan's number, avoided the dating apps, and focused on my studio. I painted. I sketched. I spent time with my sister. I rebuilt boundaries I hadn't realized had been shattered over and over. Dating again felt terrifying. Not because I feared men, but because I feared trusting myself. I had learned that my optimism could be weaponized, that I needed patience, that I needed to test the waters slowly, to watch actions instead of listening only to words. When I finally went out again, it was in daylight. Coffee first. I learned to ask questions. I learned to observe behavior over charm. I learned that the foundation of trust was consistency, not promises made over candlelight. Months later, I sat at a quiet cafe, journaling, sipping chai, feeling the warmth seep through my hands. Logan was a memory, a lesson etched into my heart. I wasn't bitter. I was cautious, wiser, awake. I realized that trust isn't given, it's earned. That a person's truth is revealed not in grand gestures, but in small, repeated actions. That self-respect is the boundary no one else should ever cross. I smiled, looking out the window at the city moving around me. Life was happening, messy, beautiful, real. I didn't need someone else's validation to feel grounded. I didn't need anyone's charm to define my worth. I had myself, steady, resilient, capable of learning from mistakes without being crushed by them. For the first time in years, I felt steady. I let the city's soft chaos remind me that tomorrow was another day, full of potential, and this time, in my own hands. Sometimes the people we hope for the most aren't the ones who can give us what we truly need. Life teaches us to value honesty, consistency and respect over charm and promises. Protect your heart, trust your instincts, and remember, self-respect is the foundation for all meaningful relationships. I never thought I'd be back in the dating world. My last relationship had ended 6 months ago, and it had left a bruise deeper than I expected. Not just the heartbreak, but the quiet, lingering doubt that maybe I wasn't cut out for this whole meeting someone new thing. I spent weeks scrolling through dating apps, half-heartedly swiping, more out of boredom than hope. Then, one evening, Danielle's profile popped up. She had this calm, approachable energy even through a screen. Her photos weren't flashy, just natural smiles, a camera in hand, some shots of Portland parks, the Willamette River, and a coffee shop she clearly loved. Her bio mentioned she was an art curator and had a soft spot for photography. She wrote about her weekends being spent exploring tiny corners of the city and her obsession with thrift store finds. What really caught me, though, were her messages. Warm, self-deprecating, the kind that made me laugh quietly at 2 a.m. We messaged for a few weeks before I felt brave enough to suggest meeting in person. I suggested Linden Park, a neutral spot with trails, a small lake, and always enough light and people to feel safe. She agreed. The night before the date, I barely slept. I rehearsed small talk, tried to imagine who she really was, and nervously checked the weather. Portland's fall was already setting in. Fog rolled in early, and evenings were chilly. I kept telling myself, it's just a walk, just a park, just coffee afterward if it goes well. When I finally arrived, she was already there. Danielle leaned against a lamppost, camera slung across her shoulder. Her smile was easy, not the kind that felt practiced, but genuine. "You're early," she said. "I didn't want to be late," I muttered. Awkward but relieved she seemed so approachable. We started walking, chatting about photography, favorite authors, little childhood adventures. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the park. I felt light, almost like I hadn't in months. There was a rhythm to our conversation, a give and take that made me forget the nervous tension in my chest. I didn't know it then, but the evening was about to test more than my nerves. We looped back toward the parking lot, laughing about a childhood dare involving mud puddles and a fallen kite. Then I saw him, a figure emerging from behind a row of bushes. My stomach dropped instantly. He was moving quickly, his hand partially concealed. Danielle's eyes widened slightly, just enough that I noticed. "Stay calm," she whispered. "Just keep walking slowly." The man stepped into our path, voice low and threatening. Wallets, phones, everything. Time froze. I couldn't move, couldn't think. But Danielle's reaction was immediate. Without hesitation, she kicked at the man's shins. He stumbled and she pushed him just enough to create space. I snapped out of it, grabbed her hand, and we ran toward the parking lot. Danielle shouted, "Call the police! Call the police!" while I fumbled for my phone. He yelled after us, frustrated, but the fog swallowed him quickly, and we reached the car without being caught. We dialed 911, my hands shaking so badly that I could barely press the buttons. The dispatcher's calm voice was like an anchor, grounding me in the chaos. I realized, sitting there with Danielle, that despite the terror, I felt something unexpected. Admiration, respect, and a strange, nervous thrill that came from seeing someone handle fear so gracefully. We sat in the car afterward, catching our breath. The adrenaline was still surging, and the silence was heavy but comfortable. I looked at her and realized I had never felt this kind of connection on a first date. Not a spark or attraction in the usual sense, but a bond forged in fear and trust. I don't know how you did that," I said finally. "You were amazing," Danielle smiled nervously, brushing damp hair from her face. "Let's just say, adrenaline makes me braver than I usually am." We laughed, and for a moment the tension lifted. The city lights reflected in the fog, and the park behind us seemed quiet and ordinary again. I realized that fear could connect people in ways no ordinary date ever could. That night, I wasn't just impressed by Danielle's bravery. I felt seen, grounded, and oddly protective. Weeks passed. The police told us there was no record for our attacker, and we were advised to stay alert. Despite that, Danielle and I started meeting more often, walking through familiar streets, sharing coffee, talking about mundane things and big dreams alike. We explored Portland's nooks, the bookstore tucked behind a cafe, the mural alley by the old warehouse district, the park when fog rolled in, casting everything in a soft, eerie light. Each adventure made me feel closer to her, like the danger that had bonded us hadn't faded but transformed into trust. We shared meals, stories, and moments that weren't about fear, yet always carried that invisible thread of shared experience. I realized the first date had been a crucible, revealing courage, instincts, and connection in a way no quiet cafe ever could. Months later, we hung a photo Danielle had taken of the fog-covered park on her apartment wall. I whispered to myself, remembering that Saturday evening. It was strange how danger, fear, and a sudden, uncontrollable adrenaline rush could turn into trust, laughter, and something undeniably intimate. That night, I realized something important. Dating isn't just about chemistry, shared interests, or witty banter. It's about witnessing someone's instinct, resilience, and character when the world suddenly turns threatening. It's about seeing someone act with courage when fear is real. Danielle had done that, and I had seen it. Not as a story, not as a screen memory, but in real life, with my own eyes. We grew closer, cautiously at first, then confidently, navigating both life and small moments together. The foggy park remained a memory, a reminder that fear can test us, and in surviving, it can create unexpected bonds. Courage and trust are forged in shared adversity. Life may place fear in our path, but facing it together can deepen relationships and reveal the strength within us, often in ways ordinary moments never could. I didn't realize how starved I was for something real until the week of back-to-back meetings ended. My calendar had been a blur of client calls, PowerPoint decks, and Zoom links. By Friday, my brain felt like it had been run through a meat grinder. I wanted human interaction that didn't revolve around deadlines or quarterly reports. I wanted laughter. I wanted conversation. Not the polite nods of coworkers half asleep on another call. Not the canned small talk with people I'd never see outside work. And then Clara Bennett appeared. Or at least her profile did. Warm smile. Love for hiking. A sarcastic sense of humor that made the one-liners in her bio feel alive. I swiped right, almost on impulse, and within hours we were messaging. It was lighthearted at first. Jokes about bad coffee, the latest overhyped Netflix series, and the misery of assembling IKEA furniture. Something about her tone felt real. Not curated, not filtered. I laughed more than I had all week and it felt nice. Then came the message that froze me. "Hey, I'm staying at the Westwood Hotel nearby. Come up, let's have a drink." I stared at the screen. Too fast, too forward. My gut shouted, "No." I typed carefully, "Thanks, but I'd rather meet somewhere public first." Then I blocked her account, hoping that would be the end of it. An hour later, a ping, another account, another message. "Don't be shy. Just one drink, I promise." My chest tightened. I laughed nervously. Must be some prank, right? Someone at work? The IT guy with too much free time? I created a fake account to video call her, just to figure out who was behind it. The screen lit up. Her face. Alive. Smiling in the Westwood Hotel lobby. The same lobby she'd said she was in. She waved, oblivious to the horror washing over me. "Ethan, didn't think you'd check." My fingers froze on the mouse. This wasn't funny. I ended the call immediately, deleted my accounts, and told myself I'd move on. But the feeling, the pit in my stomach, lingered. I couldn't shake it. Not completely. 2 months later, I thought I was safe. I'd avoided dating apps entirely, kept my routines tight, and learned to distrust sudden invitations. Then, while grabbing a morning coffee near my apartment, I felt it. The subtle pull of recognition. A woman at the next table. Her hair, the way she adjusted her jacket. The laugh that leaked out when she spoke to the barista. It was her. Clara. My stomach dropped. She looked up, caught my eye, and sent a subtle wave, a flicker of that same mischievous smile. Then she disappeared into the drizzle outside, like a ghost leaving behind the scent of fear. My hands trembled as I clutched my cup. I wasn't paranoid. I knew she had been stalking me. All those messages, the hotel appearances, it wasn't chance. Her obsession had stretched far beyond the screen. That night I double-checked every lock, pulled every blind tight, walked my apartment perimeter, noting every shadow. Every knock at the door made me tense. Every footstep in the hall sent a spike of adrenaline through my chest. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe I'd been wrong. But deep down, I knew the truth. Some people don't stop. Some people fixate, relentless. I switched cafes, changed walking routes, and when I cautiously returned to dating apps weeks later, it was under strict rules. Verification, video calls, background checks. Nothing casual, nothing impulsive. Trust, but verify. I'd learned it the hard way. Weeks passed. I thought the worst was behind me. My life returned to some semblance of normal. Then, on a Thursday evening, I was leaving my apartment when I saw her across the street. Umbrella open, head down, following a path eerily similar to mine. Panic rose, sharp and immediate. I ducked into a side street, changed direction, quickened my pace. Every rational part of me screamed, "It's just coincidence. She can't possibly." But the pit in my stomach refused to listen. I made it home, double-locked the door and sat in the dark, listening. The hum of traffic, the quiet buzz of the refrigerator, normal sounds, but each one tainted by the memory of her face. The next day I debated calling the police. But what would I say? A woman I met online keeps appearing near me? It sounded insane. They'd tell me to change routines. That's all. And yet, even now, after changing routines, I felt hunted. I felt exposed. It was an important lesson, though. Some people's charm masks obsession. Some smiles hide danger. And the world doesn't always warn you in advance. You recognize it only when you've felt it brushing against you. Months later, I finally felt a measure of safety. I changed apartments, moved farther from my old routines, avoided places I had once frequented, new cafes, new jogging routes, new patterns. I returned to dating apps only after vetting every profile, every photo, every message. I wasn't anxious anymore, not fully. I was careful. I had boundaries, rules, no fast invitations, public first, video calls mandatory. And yet, sometimes, I still thought about her. That unsettling mix of charm, confidence, and single-minded persistence. I'd shake my head and whisper to myself, trust but verify. Always verify. I started to meet people slowly. Coffee first, daylight, short conversations, observing actions over words. It wasn't thrilling, it wasn't intoxicating, but it was safe. And sometimes that's more important than excitement. By the time I started dating seriously again, I had rebuilt a sense of trust in myself. Not in everyone else, not in some instant attraction, but in my instincts. My caution wasn't cynicism, it was self-respect. Some people never stop. Some obsessions don't fade with distance. And the safest way forward is vigilance, preparedness, and prioritizing your own well-being above any fleeting connection. I carry the lesson with me daily. New faces, new apps, new conversations. I test reality before I invest hope. I value honesty and consistency above charm. I have boundaries. I have rules. Occasionally, when I sip coffee in a quiet cafe and glance out the window, I remind myself that I survived something that could have gone badly, that I learned the hard way that not everyone is safe, and sometimes self-preservation is the bravest act of all. Charm and persistence can be deceptive. The world is full of people whose intentions aren't always clear, and not everyone respects boundaries. The most important lessons in modern relationships are vigilance, verification, and trusting your instincts. Protect your space, value your safety, and never let excitement override judgment. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who leaned on dating apps to meet someone. After a string of bad relationships and awkward encounters, I was more comfortable with the familiar routines of my life. Late-night study sessions, weekend brunches with my sister, and binge-watching shows that didn't require social interaction. But loneliness has a funny way of creeping in, subtle and persistent, like fog rolling over the bay. I first matched with Logan Pierce on a quiet Thursday evening, a week before our actual date. His profile picture was relaxed. No fake smiles, just him standing in a kitchen with a messy apron and a wide grin. The caption read, "I burn water, but I promise my company is better than my cooking." I laughed at that, imagining the disaster that could be, and decided to swipe right. The next few weeks were a blend of light-hearted messages and slow flirting. He asked about my favorite childhood meals and shared pictures of the spaghetti sauce he made that night. I shared the secret recipe my grandmother had passed down, though in reality I barely followed it correctly. The conversation never hit those awkward pauses I had come to expect with new people. I felt comfortable, which scared me more than it thrilled me. By the time Friday night arrived, I was jittery. I had dressed in a navy blue dress that fell just above my knees, paired with simple flats. My hair, usually a curly mess, had been tamed into loose waves. I checked the mirror repeatedly, unsure if I looked confident or ridiculous. La Vida was small, but bustling. The scent of garlic and fresh bread mingled with the faint hum of jazz. I spotted Logan immediately. He waved, smiling nervously, and my heart gave a small leap. "You look great," he said, pulling out my chair. "Thanks," I replied, smiling back, trying to ease the tension coiling in my stomach. Traffic was insane, I almost didn't make it. We started with casual conversation, kitchen disasters, family trips, and our shared love of street art. The conversation flowed easily, laughter punctuating our stories. I felt that rare thrill, the kind where time seems to bend, and the world outside the restaurant fades away. And then she appeared. At first, I didn't register her. A woman with sharp eyes, a tense posture, and an aura of barely contained anger approached our table. "Logan, we need to talk," she snapped, her voice cutting through the restaurant's chatter. I froze. "Oh, I didn't know. You were warned," she said, voice low but steady, eyes locking onto mine. "I told you this would happen." Before I could even process it, a glass of water tipped over, splashing across the table and soaking my purse. I grabbed a napkin frantically, trying to stop the mess. Logan muttered something, hands raised in a mix of guilt and fear, but Gilda's fury didn't abate. In an instant, she lunged. I stumbled back, narrowly avoiding the scalding tea on the counter. The room seemed to spin. Chairs scraped the floor as I grabbed one to shield myself. "Stay away," I shouted, voice trembling. The staff intervened quickly, stepping between us. Patrons gasped and whispered, some calling 911. The tension crackled, sharp and suffocating. Gilda, realizing she was surrounded, finally retreated. I sank into my chair, shaking, heart hammering in my chest. Logan looked pale, guilt etched across his face. I didn't think she'd find out tonight," he muttered. I didn't answer. My instincts screamed at me. The safest place wasn't here. I grabbed my coat and slipped into the night, each breath of crisp San Francisco air grounding me as distant sirens signaled help was on the way. By the time I reached my sister's apartment, I realized something. I had survived the chaos. I had faced fear and confrontation and come out intact. My boundaries were more important than anyone else's drama, and I had discovered a kind of quiet strength I hadn't known I possessed. That night, I lay awake, thinking about Logan, about Gilda, about how easily charm can disguise danger, and I whispered to myself, next time, I pick the place, and I pick the company. The days after that night were a blur. I deleted my dating apps and avoided Logan's messages, not out of pettiness, but out of self-preservation. Every alert on my phone made my stomach twist, a memory of that chaotic evening rushing back. My sister Maya noticed the change immediately. She plopped next to me on the couch one Sunday afternoon, coffee in hand, and studied me like a detective. "You look like you've been through a tornado," she said, half laughing. "I kind of have," I admitted. I recounted the date, the confrontation, and how I'd fled. Her eyebrows knit together, worry etched on her face. "Shelley, you need to be careful," she said, voice softening. "People can be charming, but charm doesn't erase lies. You did the right thing leaving." I nodded, comforted by her words, but still rattled. The incident had left a crack in my trust. Every new person I met seemed suspect, every compliment a potential trap. I had always considered myself cautious, but this had felt like a violation, like my intuition had been right all along. Weeks passed. I went back to my routines, burying myself in work and old hobbies. Yet Logan's messages kept arriving, persistent and pleading, claiming remorse. I read one, then deleted it, unsure if I wanted closure or if reading it would reopen the wound. It wasn't just Logan. The idea of trust itself had fractured. Friends noticed my quietness at gatherings, my hesitations when meeting someone new. One evening, my coworker Jenna nudged me. "You're avoiding someone, aren't you?" she asked casually. I hesitated, unsure whether to explain. "I had a bad experience," I admitted. She nodded knowingly. "Dating's tricky. You're allowed to take your time." It was a relief to hear. I realized that survival wasn't just physical. Emotional survival, preserving my sense of safety and boundaries, was just as vital. That night I journaled for hours, trying to untangle my fear from my anger, my guilt from my relief. It was in that quiet writing that I began to understand something crucial. I didn't need to forgive Logan, and I didn't owe him a second chance. What mattered was me, my choices, my sense of security. The memory of that chaotic evening, once paralyzing, was becoming a lesson in resilience. Slowly, I began putting myself back out into the world, but carefully, intentionally. I stopped relying on dating apps and instead focused on real-life connections, friends of friends, colleagues, and social hobbies. I signed up for a cooking class, ironically enough, wanting to reclaim the joy that Logan had turned into fear. The class was small, a mix of amateurs and semi-professionals, but it was therapeutic. Chopping, stirring, and tasting grounded me. For the first time in weeks, I felt normal again. I laughed freely when someone dropped pasta sauce on the floor, when jokes about culinary disasters flew across the room. I realized that trust wasn't a binary. It wasn't that everyone was dangerous or safe. It was about learning to navigate risk and listen to my instincts. One evening after class, a fellow student, Max, walked me home. Conversation flowed naturally, lighthearted and unforced. Unlike Logan, he respected my pace, never pressing for more than I was willing to give. I realized that trust could be rebuilt, slowly, with the right people. Months later, I was walking downtown when I saw Logan in the distance. My first instinct was panic, but I paused. He looked older somehow, wearier, perhaps humbled. I didn't approach him, didn't engage, but I noticed the difference. I wasn't scared. Not anymore. That night, I reflected on how far I had come. The chaos of that first date, the confrontation, the fleeing through the streets. It had all been terrifying, but it had also taught me something invaluable. I was capable of standing my ground, of making decisions in the face of fear, of preserving myself. By the following spring, I had moved into my own apartment, a space I could fully control. Candles lined the windowsills. Soft music played in the background, and I finally felt at peace. I still remembered that night at La Vida, but it no longer held me hostage. I knew now that charm and sweet words could mask danger. Boundaries were essential. Trust was precious, to be earned carefully. And above all, survival isn't just about running from harm. It's about recognizing it and protecting yourself before it escalates. I whispered to myself as I lit another candle, the soft flicker warming the room. Next time I pick the place, and I pick the company. Because I had learned that the strongest love and respect one could offer isn't for someone else. It's for oneself. Life can present charm and allure that hide danger, but trusting your instincts, setting boundaries, and prioritizing your safety are acts of strength, not weakness. Survival and growth come from knowing your worth and refusing to compromise it. I hadn't intended to be back on a dating app. After a 6-year relationship that ended more with exhaustion than heartbreak, I swore off swiping for strangers. But loneliness has a subtle way of sneaking in under the guise of new beginnings. My best friend Jenna kept nudging me. "Just try it," she said. "You might be surprised." I downloaded the app one Sunday evening, half-hearted, and spent 30 minutes scrolling through profiles. Half the faces blurred into the same filtered smiles, the same carefully curated poses. Then I saw him. Ethan Parker. 30. A barista and amateur photographer who claimed he could make the best cappuccino in Texas. His photos weren't overdone, just natural, and his bio made me laugh. Professional overthinker, part-time pizza enthusiast. I swiped right on impulse, more for curiosity than hope. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. Ethan had swiped right on me too. A week of messaging began with light jokes about latte art fails, favorite music, and hiking trails. There was a rhythm to our conversation that felt effortless. Then came Friday, the day we decided to meet. I dressed carefully, choosing a casual dress I felt confident in and sneakers for comfort. The rooftop bar he suggested was downtown, a quiet spot with fairy lights and a view of the city skyline. My stomach fluttered in anticipation. I arrived first, ordered a drink, and picked a table near the edge so I could see the whole bar. Ethan appeared 20 minutes later carrying a bouquet of daisies, an oddly sweet touch. "Hey, you're even better in person," he said, voice easy, a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I felt a blush creep across my cheeks. "Thanks. You're not so bad yourself," I replied, tucking my hair behind my ear. We laughed, exchanged stories about ridiculous jobs we'd had, and shared a few small secrets. I was surprised at how comfortable I felt. But as the night went on, little things began to nag at me. He reached across the table a bit too eagerly when I mentioned my drink. "I can hold that for you," he said, grabbing my hand lightly. I pulled back subtly. He smiled, but his eyes lingered, and a small prick of unease crept into my chest. I brushed it off, telling myself I was imagining things. Ethan suggested moving to a quieter spot on the rooftop, closer to the edge where fewer people were sitting. "It'll be more private. I don't like crowds," he said, almost pleading. I hesitated. My gut screamed caution, but the night had been so easy so far. We slid into the secluded corner, and the view of the city lights distracted me for a moment. The conversation continued, but a subtle tension hovered. Ethan's questions shifted from casual to pointed. "Where do you live exactly? Who else knows you're out tonight?" I felt my stomach tighten. "I don't usually share that info right away," I said cautiously, trying to keep the tone light. He laughed, but it was sharp. "Fair enough. Just seems, I don't know, distant." His hand brushed mine again, lingering this time. I withdrew slowly. "I like keeping some things private," I said firmly. The rest of the night felt off. Ethan made small comments about my outfit and the way I held my drink that weren't flattering, like he was testing my reactions. I laughed nervously, hoping to smooth over my rising anxiety. When he insisted I try a drink he recommended, I politely declined. His smile flickered, a shadow crossing his face. On the way out, he suggested grabbing a ride to another bar that was even more intimate. I felt panic crawl up my spine. "Actually, I think I'll call it a night," I said. My voice was steady, but my heart raced. Ethan hesitated, his tone shifting. "Come on, don't go yet, we're just getting started." I shook my head. "No, really. I'm fine here." He didn't push physically, but the insistence in his tone left me uneasy. I left with a tight grip on my keys, my phone clutched like a lifeline. Walking through the streets of Austin, I realized how quickly charm could be a mask and how important it was to listen to that inner voice screaming caution. A week later, Ethan messaged, apologetic, claiming he just got caught up in the moment. I debated replying, but curiosity got the better of me. We exchanged casual texts, nothing heavy, nothing personal. Then came subtle nudges. "You should come out tonight. I just got a table at this place, you'd love it." Each time my intuition screamed no. But each text made me anxious. What if I overreacted? What if I was just being paranoid? One Thursday, he sent a message. "I feel like we have a connection. Don't shut me out. I really like you." I stared at the screen, heart hammering. It was flattering, but my skin crawled. I typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, I sent, "I think we should slow things down. I'm not comfortable moving this fast." Ethan's reply came almost immediately. "Are you saying you don't trust me? I'd never hurt you. Why are you being so distant?" I felt a rush of heat. I hadn't said anything about trust, just a desire for boundaries. But his reaction made me second-guess everything. I put my phone down, breathing deeply, and reminded myself that discomfort is a signal, not a flaw. I deserved to feel safe. Saturday night, I agreed to meet a friend at a coffee shop. While waiting, Ethan appeared, uninvited. My stomach dropped. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" I said, trying to mask panic with annoyance. "I just wanted to see you," he said too casually, stepping closer. My chest tightened. He wasn't listening to my boundaries. My hands clenched around my bag strap. "Listen, I've told you I'm not comfortable with this. You need to leave," I said firmly. His expression darkened. "I just don't get why you keep avoiding me. I like you." I realized in that moment that charm can't protect someone from their own insistence. I walked quickly to the counter, bought a drink, and didn't look back until I was outside, taking steady breaths in the cool night air. For hours afterward, my body shook, not from physical harm, but from the fear of someone who didn't respect my boundaries. I deleted his number. I deleted the dating app. Weeks later, I sit in my apartment with a candle burning on the kitchen counter. I still feel wary of unexpected approaches, but I also feel stronger. I've started joining local hobby groups, going to book clubs, even meeting friends of friends, slow introductions without pressure or screens. I've realized that attraction can mask danger, that charm doesn't equal safety, and that my instincts are my best guide. I can enjoy connections again, but on my own terms. I pick the places, I pick the company, and most importantly, I pick me. Every time I think of Ethan, I don't feel shame. I feel gratitude for the lessons learned. Trusting your instincts, setting firm boundaries, and prioritizing your own safety are more important than the thrill of attraction or charm. Real connection requires respect, patience, and mutual understanding. And if someone cannot honor that, it's not worth the risk.